Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Hi, I am Dalip Singh. For this edition of State of Economy podcast, we have with us former Defense Secretary Mr. Ajay Kumar, who besides his vast experience is known for deep dive into technology for governance solutions. This comes from his rich academic background. He is alumnus of IIT Kanpur and University of Minnesota, USA. We are looking for an engaging conversation with Mr. Kumar on the need for next generation defense reforms and geopolitical situation. Welcome to the podcast, sir. Let's begin our conversation. Sir, as Defense Secretary, you have seen through first set of glass-breaking defense reforms to promote Atmanirbharta in military sector. It has paid off to instill confidence in the industry to produce our own weapon systems. But there is a need to roll out Defense Reform 2.0 for big ticket innovations, crunching procurement time, and creating global supply chain ecosystem. Sir, can you tell us precisely what should be focus area of these fundamental reforms?
Thank you for having me. For the first time after independence, we are witnessing true self-reliance, true Atmanirbharta. But we are seeing a large number of new private companies and startups today entering in the defense field. We are also seeing our own defense PSUs strengthening and performing better than what they have been doing in the past. And these are good signs. But this is really the start. It would not be appropriate to say that we have reached where we would want to in the defense ecosystem. If I were to say that we are on a takeoff stage, and in the next 5 to 10 years, we have potential to be really one of the big defense industry ecosystem in the world, to be counted among the top 3 or 4 defense industry ecosystems. But for this purpose, a large number of reforms have taken place in the last few years. Some of the things which I would like to see, in my opinion, as the next level reform for making sure that we really reach the pinnacle of defense industry ecosystem of the world, I would like to say number 1 is reform in the defense R&D ecosystem. The government has already set up a very high-level committee under Professor Vijay Raghavan to look into it, and I think that would be extremely important. The second thing is, I think we need significant procurement reforms. Defense is not like any other sector where you will have multiple people making planes, fighter planes, or you will have multiple people making submarines. Therefore, what is standard procurement practice may not work very well in defense. In this process, somewhere down the line, we have created an extremely complex procurement process, which takes a lot of time. I think it's very important that we should create a simpler defense procurement mechanism based on the functional needs of the armed forces. And for this, defense acquisition procedure needs to be amended thoroughly. We had put up a target of completing a typical average defense procurement in 2 years. I think keeping that as an aim, simplification needs to be done. The third thing is, the defense acquisition procedure, while it provides for both Make in India as well as foreign procurements, it does not really provide for private public partnership model, which could help in actually developing big ticket items, Presently, we see a lot of innovation happening in the startup ecosystem, but there is limitation in terms of very big projects being taken up through the startup ecosystem. And for that, we need public-private partnership models, and defense acquisition procedure needs to be amended to include that. Third, I would like to mention is the need, inter-ministerial coordination need in defense. And defense uses a whole range of products. Many of these products with amendments or customizations can also have tremendous application in civil and commercial sector for common people. Most companies in the world, when they are producing for defense, they have equally big or much bigger civil market component as well. I think we need to create that collaboration so that what technologies are being developed for defense with suitable changes could also be adapted for civil commercial market. For example, we need to develop our own electronic chips. The requirements of defense cannot justify having these chips in developing these chips in India. And by trying to synergize civil and commercial market, we could actually create significant industry for electronic chips as well. Lastly, I would like to mention some areas where I think we still need to develop technologies. One of them is specifically rare earths, which is today the supply chain of rare earths is becoming extremely critical, and we need to develop technologies through which, one, we can use alternative materials. Two, we could recycle existing used equipment or components to get rare earths. Second technology where we need to be developing capability very fast is creating strategy for quantum proofing our cyber infrastructure. If we have any one country who develops quantum technology and that country wants to break our cyber cryptography, they will have open access practically to all our critical infrastructure. And therefore, to ensure that such an eventuality is taken care of quickly, I think quantum proofing of our cyber infrastructure is a must.
So the industry is raising some other issues also beyond what you have stated. For instance, the issues they are flagging are related to PLIs, tax structure, and protection of IPRs. So what do you have to say on them?
3-4 things. On these 3 points which you mentioned, PLI, PLI is something where, which is a financial incentive to promote higher level of production. My own experience tells me that in sectors like, industry will always demand for additional incentives. But in sectors like defense, whether it is defense export or whether it is supplying to the Indian Armed Forces, the defense market really, it does not make too much of a difference if 2 to 4% incentive is additionally given, because most of the times there are significant margins once the order has been obtained. So the real important thing in defense always is to be able to obtain the orders either from your own armed forces or from the armed forces of another country. And therefore, I am not personally aware this demand did not come while I was in office, but if this demand is there, I think it can be looked into. But really, I don't think it is going to make a very big difference to the overall ecosystem. On tax structure, I think this is a very important issue, and this needs to be ensured. We have done, every time we find that we have a tax structure which is unfavorable to the industry, we try to resolve it. And several of these such issues have been addressed in the past. I'm sure several times these tax issues come up because once you develop a new product or a new technology or a new way of doing things, which requires different components or inputs to go to make that product, new kind of tax issues will come. So this is a continuously developing area. And the whole idea is that as and when such a tax issue arises, the government should look into it and try to resolve it so that the industry is not put to a disadvantage. And I think on this general principle, there is no difference of opinion anywhere. On specifics, I think these will have to be taken up with the Ministry of Defense as well as with the Ministry of Finance. And as regards IP, again, here I would like to say, the first point is, I think we have a very stable and a reliable IP regime in the country. And I say this with my experience in the Ministry of Electronics and IT. IT industry, the global IT industry was the first which started developing their intellectual property in India. And it's now over 20, 30 years that this has been happening. And we are all aware that we have not had any incident of such IP compromise. So therefore, I think we have a fairly stable regime of IP protection in the country. However, having said that, when we look at defense, again, unlike in other industrial sectors where people are looking to use their IP for commercial gains, very often defense companies are not looking to sell their IP and take commercial advantage of it. They want to protect it as a trade secret, as a competitive advantage against the adversary and against the rest of the world. And therefore, they're not even interested in filing their IPs. For those who do want to, I think there is significant amount of protection that is available. I may just add that during my period in 3 years, the defense PSUs under the Mission Raksha Gyan Shakti filed about over 2,000 patents, many of which have been granted, some of which are still under process. And therefore, those who are interested in filing IPs, I think there is a robust regime which is enabling them to file the IPs.
Getting on to another issue, sir, another defense industry concern is identifying and structuring a tier system in India, like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 in supply chain. As of now, what is happening, there is a creamy layer and the big boys of Indian defense industry is running away with all the cake. So they identify all the 3 tiers and bring in a structure which is available in foreign countries as well. So there is a level playing field for everybody in the supply chain ecosystem.
Yeah, this is something which needs further discussion. As you realize that in India, this whole ecosystem is more of recent origin. We today see mid to big size companies who are in defense and taking away substantive orders. We see small scale industry coming up and we see startups coming up. We are also seeing rapid growth of small scale to big scale also, or medium scale as well. What I mean to say is there is a fast transition that we see of small companies growing bigger and bigger companies growing even bigger. And that's something which is a very healthy trend. So I think we will need to evolve a model which will work for us. I am of the view that we should not put too many artificial boundaries which will slow down the momentum that we see today in the industry. The point which you make is a very valid point. It's important that we should be able to, take advantage of the capacity of the overall ecosystem. So if in some particular components or products or smaller items, if the small scale industry can do better than the big industry, there may be a case for them being promoted. Having said that, the current defense acquisition procedure actually provides for certain degree of financial boundaries. And although I do not remember the exact numbers, but if my memory serves me right, I think up to 50 crores or 100 crore orders are reserved for MSMEs. And if the order value is less than that, then only MSMEs can participate. Similarly, certain things are reserved for startups, and when the development is involved, financial thresholds have been put for the kind of companies that can participate. The broad point I'm making is, while we can further, the people who are looking into it, they may like to further fine tune this. But the important point is, one, we would not want to slow down the speed of growth of our ecosystem. And second is, we should be able to maximize the capacity of the system so that all players have the ability to participate and contribute to the defense industry.
So far we have talked about the policy and the processes. Let's get on to the human resource aspect of the defense sector. So there is a strong feeling, for skill enhancement even in the MOD, because of the sort of challenges new futuristic weapon systems are throwing. Was there any initiative made during your tenure? If yes, what was that? And if not, what do you have to say? What should happen in next course of time?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And I think this is an area which is of great interest in MOD as well, capacity building. And I'm aware that MOD has tied up with some of the leading institutions, training and academic institutions like IIMs and Rashtriya Raksha University, and capacity building exercises is going on. But I am reminded of this, story when I had first joined Ministry of Defense in 2017. As some of your listeners may know, prior to coming to Ministry of Defense as Secretary Defense Production, I used to be Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Electronics and IT. And there we were dealing with all the latest technologies. And we had realized that artificial intelligence would be the future game changer in most fields, including defense. So when I reached there, those days, General Bipin Rawat was Chief of Army Staff. And in one of the social meetings, I was asking him that how is our Army and Defense Forces in general prepared to deal with the challenge of artificial intelligence. And he got very interested and very excited. And he said, all right, we had a preliminary discussion. And then he said, okay, let's have a discussion on this, and I'll fix up a time. And promptly in the next week, he fixed up time where we could discuss artificial intelligence. I went there and I was quite wonderstruck, because he not only that he was there, he had called every 3-star general in Delhi to be there to listen to what was to be said of how artificial intelligence could be used in defense. And that's a wonderful presentation that I made a presentation to that big group of about 50, 60 officers, 3-star officers. And thereafter, we reached a consensus that let's create a special task force for how we could increase the use of artificial intelligence, which we did immediately. And Mr. N. Chandrasekhar, in fact, he had already become chairman of Tata Sons, kindly agreed to chair the task force. This was yet another first, because for the first time we had an industry captain leading a Ministry of Defense task force with representatives from all the armed forces and Ministry of Defense, etc. And within 3 months, the task force gave its report. To cut the long story short, 3 years later, we had an event in which the Raksha Mantri launched 75 new indigenous artificial intelligence products, which were developed within the Defense Ministry of Defense. And there were many more which were under development. Some of the more classified technologies could not even be launched because it would not have been proper. And as a result, thanks to this effort, we saw a tremendous amount of change of mindset in the whole of Ministry of Defense, whether it was armed forces, whether it was defense PSUs, DRDO, and private industry working together. Today, actually, we have scores of these happening all around. But a lot of new areas one is looking at. For example, we are looking at quantum technologies. We are looking at space today. We are looking at underwater domain awareness. Each of these technologies are new areas which are going to impact our defense preparedness in a big way. And I think what's nice about the new defense innovation ecosystem is that there is willingness and mechanism to make sure that we are able to continuously improve and move along with the moving requirements of technology in the defense arena.
So can there be a case for lateral entry of domain experts into MOD, or specialized job can be outsourced, as you gave example of use of AI?
What is absolutely essential is that MOD and all pillars of MOD need to move along with times as the technology changes. We have already created an ecosystem in the industry which is today very vibrant, which is capable of coming up for solutions in all these new emerging areas. Now, for MOD and to be able to actually utilize and accept and adopt these solutions, the capability needs to be built. As you have said, there are multiple ways, and there could be a combination of these ways which could be resorted to. One is we need to enhance the capacity of the existing people who are there. Two, we should partner with other players, whether it is in forms of consultants or whether it is in form of academia or whether it is in form of other experts, who could help create that capability within MOD. And the third area is that we could possibly, if required, go for lateral entry as well.
So another question I think everybody in the sector is looking up to. What is the outlook for defense outlay for next few years? Do you think, given geopolitical tensions, India will go in for much larger increase in defense budget next year?
During the 3 years when I was Defense Secretary, we have had very healthy growth in the defense budget, particularly in the defense capital budget side. We have had growths ranging between 15 to 28% in a year, which is quite outstanding. Let me also share with your listeners that the government has always assured me at the highest levels that the requirements of defense would always be met and there would be no compromise with respect to funds that are required. So my take is I do not see any change in this broad approach the government has. Defense requirements are a priority, and whatever legitimate requirements of defense would be met in the next budget as well.
Given global insecurity, and especially at our northern borders, do you see that will translate into a defense ministry getting a larger size of the slice of the budget?
What is larger than when you get whatever you want? What is larger than that?
Because why I'm saying so, our big ticket acquisitions are still in the pipeline, and that would obviously require funding.
No. So what I'm saying is I am not aware of any big ticket item. In fact, let me share another story with you. Our budget used to be large enough so that one of the biggest challenges as Defense Secretary, which I would have to face, is to make sure that we actually use all the money that was being allocated to us. And we used to have monthly meetings in the last quarter and weekly meetings in the last month. at the highest levels, at my level, at Raksha Mantri's level, to make sure that all the budget that we received could be utilized and we did not have to go begging, saying that we couldn't spend it.
Sir, I can cite a specific example. For instance, Air Chief has been saying for long, and again, I think last week he made it that we need something around 100 LCAs. Then Indian Navy is also looking up for another aircraft carrier, and they say that it is important to theaterization, which is again that's another issue we can talk about. These are pointed concerns raised by chiefs publicly, and privately also we are told that much of it is not happening because of the budget constraints, sir.
I would still like to reiterate what I said earlier. And you see, the point is, you must understand that everything, the requirement of additional aircraft is justified. There are two different things. One is cash flows, and second is approval. And the approval process for, taking a decision whether a particular equipment is required or not is something on which a call needs to be taken by all the concerned stakeholders based on all the considerations that lie before us. I am not privy to what are the considerations on which some of these decisions would be taken. But I can tell you that while there may be particular view that may prevail and which may be said by one person, there may be a counter view said by another person. And when the final decision is taken, this is taken based on the overall best understanding, based on the best interests of the country. And therefore, but I can again repeatedly say, and I re-emphasize this, and I want to make this very clear to all our listeners, that none of these decisions ever, the lack of financial resources ever has come in between taking these decisions. The decisions would be on merit, based on need, and based on the capability of what is possible in a particular time frame.
So, as Defense Secretary, you were close witness to Galwan standoff. Since then, we have had multiple sort of engagements to resolve the border issue with China. What in your assessment what do you think is holding back China to come to a negotiating table, especially on two friction points?
I am not privy to anything that has happened after I left office. The second point, the larger point is, if you look at the larger ecosystem of the way the problems have happened, there is a particular manner or a trend that we see in which China has addressed its boundary issues, whether it is continental issues, whether it is in South China Sea. What is most remarkable, and we have had appreciation from not only within India, but also most of the other parts of the world, is that when there was pressure mounted on India, on the Indian Armed Forces, the kind of response the Indian Armed Forces gave was a befitting response, as a result of which today it is very clear to all those who have seen it that when it will come to protecting the interests of the country, India will not buckle. India will not take it lying down and respond with as much as force as possible. And we are capable of protecting our interests. That has become quite evident to all those who mattered.
Now, getting on to another geopolitical issue, what do you think are options before India in case of Taiwan contingency?
I think the guiding principle is what has been said at the G20. And that will be the guiding principle as far as India is concerned. We have said this is not an era of war. We have said that unilaterally countries should not try to change status quo. And dialogue is the best way of resolving solutions. But then, it is totally speculative, and I don't think it is fair to, speculate on these matters. Depending on what the situation is, India would definitely prepare a response which is both in line with its own interests, as well as in line with the larger principles of universal brotherhood, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that we have been promoting in this new world.
I think, sir, we have had a fair share of discussion, different aspects of defense reform and issues which is plaguing the sector. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, and we hope to hear you more on this podcast in future.
Thank you. Thank you very much.